All right, let's check this out. Ah, people standing on the back there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good. I need to find a good place to stay. So how about this? That way I won't be blinded by the slides. And maybe I'm sort of in the middle and you can see me. Good. Okay. So thank you. I did not fly from the United States. I flew from Krakow, Poland. So I was at Agile Poland a couple of days ago and actually celebrated my 73rd birthday there. I recommend it. You get a lot of hugs from Polish guys. So you've got my contact information on the very first slide. I will be here all day. But if I don't get a chance to talk to you and you had a question, either about what I'm going to talk about or something I have talked about or something I'm thinking about talking about, then please send me some email. I'll be home in about a week, and I'll be happy to have a chat with you electronically. So that's my contact information, and we're going to talk about organizational change myths. So isn't it wonderful we all speak English, I think? Is that right? Oh, wait, I speak American. That's different, sorry. I was commenting earlier this morning, I feel like I'm in a movie hearing all these wonderful accents. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like, no, okay. That maybe you're in a Western. Actually, now I live in Nashville, Tennessee, so I have to practice my Southern. So how are y'all doing? I'm not getting so good at that. So everybody knows what a pattern is? Yes? Okay, so you have seen probably the design patterns. That was so long ago. Maybe you weren't even born yet, 1994. And since design patterns came out in 94, it has changed our industry. It looks at architecture, at design, customer interaction, testing, and now organizational change. And the idea is that I can give you a name, and with that name, I can hand you the solution to a problem in a context. So that's what I'm going to do this morning, is give you some patterns, some names for solutions, maybe to problems that you have. We shall see. The book is called Fearless Change. My wonderful friend and co-author, Mary Lynn Manns, and I took 10 years to write this book, and it appeared 10 years ago. Now, why did it take us so long? Well, if you've ever written any patterns, you know that you can't just create a book of good ideas. Patterns have to be based on the experience of others who have used your idea and have said in a formal setting, a workshop of some sort, oh yes, I have done that, that works. So it can't just be about your thoughts, your ideas. The talk I just gave in Poland had to do with science and how precious little we have in our field. In fact, we have none. We make decisions not based on science, but on stories. So that was the talk. You can probably find it out there somewhere now, Science and Stories. So we need to look at what other people are doing. So there's a lot of research behind this book from social psychology. A lot of the patterns sit on or based on influence strategies. And in addition, we have validation from everyone around the world who tested our patterns and said, yes, they work for me. And now I'm happy to announce we have a new book. So we are working on a 10-year cycle. Given my age, I don't know whether I have another book in me yet. We shall see. And that the copies arrived truly just as I was walking out the door. So I have a copy of this with me, and I've forgotten. Steve, how are we going to give this away?
We are going to give it away at the end of the discussion panel for the question you find most interesting.
That's right. So we're going to have a panel today, and this will encourage you to ask a provocative question because you might win the book. Be one of the first in your neighborhood to have a copy of More Fearless Change. Okay. So I have a couple of quotes from Jeff Patton. Anyone know Jeff Patton? Oh, one of my favorite people. You're not here to build software, you're here to change the world. In fact, if that's not how you feel about what you do every day, you need to find another job. That's my metric. If you feel like, yes, I'm not just building one of these wonderful products that we saw earlier, I really want to make a difference. I want to change the world. So here's myth number 1, and let's start with a poll. How many smart people in the room? Oh, come on. There must be more than 3 smart people here. No smart people? Oh, yeah, thank you. 4 people, 4 smart people. Wonderful. And because you're smart, I'll just pick on you because you're standing. Because you're smart, you make all decisions rationally. No. No. What about those other 3 smart people? Where are they? No, not rational? No. See, now if I were in Poland, I would have different responses to that question because they're very rational in Poland, and they tend to believe this. They believe this myth that because we're smart and the people we work with are smart, that we make our decisions rationally. And usually my first pushback is to say, smart, rational person, are you married? Was that rational? And usually they will agree, perhaps that one decision might not have been rational, but all my other decisions are rational. And since we make our decisions that way, that's how we try to convince others. So if we have a wonderful idea, and most of the time these days I'm at an agile conference of some sort, so our wonderful idea is agile. If my team is not going agile, then I want to convince them or I want to influence them. And since I subscribe to this myth, as most of us do, what we do is present a logical argument. We give reasons. In fact, think about it. If you want to talk to, have a conversation with, influence anyone, is that the first recourse? Let me give you some reasons why you should adopt my wonderful idea. Come on, isn't that what you do? Here are the reasons. Yeah, and that's true not only at work, but at home. Why we should go to this movie or this restaurant, or to your children. How's that working out for you? Not so well? No, let me tell you why, and then if we're properly enticed, we might just say, do it. Because we can. That's actually another myth that works. So this is unfortunately not true. And there's plenty of research that shows we don't make our decisions because of logic. We make our decisions for, so I started out this morning by telling you you're not rational. Now I'm about to tell you something that I think is very disturbing, which is that we don't even know why we make our decisions. Not only do we not know, we cannot know. That part of our brain that makes those decisions is hidden from us. And what we do instead, we explain to someone who wants to know why we made a particular decision. We can give a good reason afterwards that makes perfect logical sense, and that's called Yes, rationalization. We're very good at that. We make it up. I can make it up and I can tell you why I decided to come to the UK in the middle of a trip when I'm going from Krakow to Budapest, and I think, no, I could work that out. I could come to London and then I could go back. I can give you a perfectly logical explanation for that after the fact. So don't confuse those two, because that set of reasons is purely fiction. And the stronger we feel about that decision, the easier it is for us to come up with that nice, rational argument after the fact. So if you want to convince somebody of your idea, then yes, you do need to have a logical, rational argument. Keep that in your pocket, but that's not going to convince anybody. You need something else. You need to make an emotional connection. And the way you do that is by appealing to belief. In fact, the title of the talk I gave in Krakow was called Science and Stories. And in it, I posed the question, we are talking about agile development in Krakow, so I'm not sure whether that applies to your various topics or not, but my wonderings are around, I wonder if agile works only because we believe in it. Now, if we were doing drug testing, we would say that's a placebo. Are you familiar with the word placebo? Placebos are typically a vitamin pill, a sugar pill, a normal saline, even sham surgery. So there's no real treatment there, but people get better in a drug trial because they are given a placebo. Why is that? What's the magic of a placebo? Why does it work? Yeah, it's belief. It's your brain. It's your brain saying, oh, I'm going to take this pill, I'm going to have this surgery, I'm going to have this injection, and then whatever my problem is will get better. Oh, if we only understood how that really works, we wouldn't really need an enormous pharmacy like Boots. I love Boots. You can find anything, and you can buy sandwiches at Boots. What a great place. We need to have Boots in the United States, I think. Yeah. It's the power of belief. So don't dismiss this. The effect is real. In fact, we can shove people in an MRI machine after they've had placebo, and we can see that the same parts of their brain light up as those who have had the real drug. It's exactly the same response in our brains. So this is real. Don't dismiss it as, oh, well, it's just placebo. So you might consider that about whatever it is that you're interested in. If you have no science behind it, and we sure don't in Agile, we have no scientific, randomized, controlled experiments that show Agile is better than anything, no proof, no science, then all we have is belief. So embrace it. That's what IBM used to say. You can't fix it, feature it. Make it a feature. There's nothing we can do about it. So that's what we will do. We will take advantage of the fact that that's how people make decisions anyway. So let's go with it. And the pattern is called evangelist. I don't know how that translates for you, but in the United States, that has a bit of a religious flavor. Does it for you? as well? Yes, religion. And so we had a debate about that in the beginning. Yes, no, should we look for another name? Should we stick with evangelist? And now we see 10 years later, that was exactly the right name. Because in the beginning, when you're trying to introduce a new idea, you have no science. You have no proof. You don't know whether this great idea will work in your organization or not. You only believe it will help you be better. So you are an evangelist. And your job is to convert. Influence the others by converting them to your point of view. Now be careful, I've got a warning there. There's a fine line between being enthusiastic about something and being a fanatic. You would never see that in the Agile community, would you? Oh no, no Agile fanatics there. No Agile camps there. If you're not doing these 10 practices in this order, then certainly you could not be anointed with the Agile term. No, no, no. You would never see anything like that. So be careful. There's a fine line between being an evangelist and being a fanatic. And the pattern is called emotional connection. That's your job. Not to logically convince people. Of course, you have that. We all pretend that we'd like to see that. We all pretend when we put that PowerPoint slide up there that has all of the benefits, that we're paying attention to that and that it influences us. We need that. But that's not what will influence others to adopt your idea. It's going to be that emotional connection as you play the role of evangelist. This is a difficult one. We want to believe in good and evil. Surely our idea, it's so good. That should be enough. I don't need to convince people. They should just see how good this idea is. How many believe that myth?
Not since Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. So that would be my question. Have you ever known a time in history when a technical idea, we won't even talk about political ideas. After all, I live in the country that voted for George Bush. Let's stick to the technical stuff here, Linda. Don't get in politics. Can you think of a time? And you can probably come up with a lot of technical ideas where the battle between good and evil was, it went the wrong way, didn't it? Sorry? Plenty of examples, actually. We don't have to struggle, but we forget that. We fall in love with our idea. And part of what we love about that idea is goodness. So we seem to be hardwired to hold this belief in justice. Good will triumph in the end. Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. I have told you you're not rational. You have no understanding of why you make decisions. And now I'm telling you, good does not always win. What a downer. And this is the opening talk. Let's see. Are you okay? Maybe we should have a big hug. Oh, wait a minute. What am I saying? This is the UK. Yeah.
We don't hug.
You don't want to have no hugging here. Yeah. All right. So this is a cognitive bias we have. And even now, that I'm telling you about it. And I'll tell you a couple of other biases. We don't have time to cover them all in such a short talk. Even though I say this, there's nothing you can do about it. You are hardwired. So that means it has evolutionary benefit. At some point, those of us who had that survived, and those who didn't, well, that's why we're here. So it must be a good thing, even though it's not a perfect way of looking at the world. It gives us a way to move forward. So don't disparage it, just realize that it's a bias. And what we need then is a way to say, I believe this is such a wonderful idea, it is so good. But one of the things I like about Agile, and I'm an Agile believer, is that it has put on the table a little piece of science in the sense of continually striving to improve and learning by failure. Put that hypothesis in front of the customer, deliver that visible, usable increment, and now let's get feedback. That's very close to the scientific method, and according to psychologists, and I am not one, but it's what I read about these days, that's how we learn. We learn by constantly testing, seeing what fits and what doesn't fit. So we didn't think about it at the time, but this collection of patterns actually describes the learning cycle or the iterative delivery cycle. The first pattern is just do it. Take a small step forward. Think about it. Time for reflection. Small successes. It's so easy for us to see things that are wrong. We have a bias for the negative. And then baby steps. I was overhearing a discussion this morning. I'm trying to look for the people who were talking about that, about introducing something into an organization and how difficult it is to make sweeping change. I'm not a believer in wholesale change, although we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm a believer in baby steps, small steps. Lots of research shows that if you can just get anybody in your organization, even one team, so that would be a baby step, one team to try some small thing, then we tend to keep moving in that direction. The influence strategy is called commitment or consistency. Once we've said anything or we've done anything, we tend to keep on saying or doing that or to like it. And so the power of baby steps is really pretty big. And then what you want, of course, is by repeating that cycle, at some point you'll reach a tipping point. And then massive change will seemingly like magic. It is magic. So you can't just believe that your good idea is going to sell everyone just because of the goodness of the idea. In fact, goodness is not even a requirement. You can use the same strategies for bad ideas. I have a friend who has a friend who studies, it's a good way to describe it, people who, with power who have done horrible things, who have slaughtered thousands of people in the name of some good cause. And every single one of those people, when interviewed, said, I believed that I was doing the right thing. I believe that by causing horrible things to happen to a lot of people, my intent was good. So what is goodness? Maybe we all believe we're doing good things. It just doesn't look like that from the outside. If you spend any time in a country like Poland, and it seems like a lot of bad things happen there, I struggle with that notion. And that's not a good indicator for you thinking, I haven't gotten to figure it out yet, and at my age, wow. Maybe you're smarter than I am. This is the most influential pattern in the collection. It's my favorite. It has to do with sharing food. And what we know that regardless of whether your idea is good or not, this is the most influential thing you can do is say to someone, hey, come on, I'll buy you a cup of coffee and we'll talk about my great idea. Now you have to buy the coffee or the beer or the cookies or whatever it is. But sitting down and sharing food together, this is another hardwired tendency we have. It's been around with us forever. In some languages, the word, the expression for a friend has something to do with food. So in French, it's compagnon, the person with whom I break bread. And you say, well, I think you're right behind us. The United States is no longer the fattest nation on the face of the earth. I'm sorry. It's Mexico. We have been overtaken by Mexico in more ways than one, even in the United States. I once worked on a team where the decision to go to a meeting or not was made by a scout who went ahead to look into the meeting room to see whether there were cookies. And what kind of cookies? Were they the big chocolate chip with walnuts? Okay, then we might go to the meeting. I'm sure that never happens here. In the United States, we don't need more cookies. People I normally work with could afford to buy all the cookies they wanted. So why was it so important to have the cookies? And yet when I showed this pattern to all of the executives, they said, oh yes, we know that. If you want to get the engineers to show up for the meeting, all you have to do is have cookies. So it's a powerful pattern, and whether we like it or not, we should use it. So here's one of my favorite experiments. It has to do with convincing people to vote on a contentious issue. And they came in with their PowerPoint presentation, and to one group, they gave the presentation and also gave cookies. To the other group, I'm sorry, you get the same PowerPoint presentation, but no cookies for you. Now the question is, which group voted for the contentious issue? What do you think? Would I be telling you the story if we didn't have? Yeah, it was the group that got the cookies, of course. Now, here's the interesting question. That voting sometimes worked against the interests of the people who were voting. They would vote, for instance, to increase taxes. So it has nothing to do with goodness, the goodness of the idea, whatever that means. But it does have to do with the goodness of the cookies. Yes, 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 it does have to do with the goodness of the cookies. Because if you don't bring in a treat of some kind, something that the group likes, what do you think happens? I bring in whole wheat fig Newtons. And now the group that got the cookies tends to vote against the issue more than the control group. So be careful with the do food. It has nothing to do with what you're trying to talk about. It has to do with the kind of food you bring to influence. Oh. Are you okay out there? All right, you're doing fine. Myth number 3. Oh, if only I were the CEO or the vice president. I could just make them do it. So this is what you do with your children. When at the end of the day you've exhausted your logical alternatives and you said, I'm the father or the mother, just do it. Does that work? Well, what we know is, yes, do it or I will kill you. That's very effective. Do it or I will fire you. I once had a conversation with the vice president of a large telecom company in the United States, and he said, Linda, I do not need these patterns. I tell people we are going to do Agile or whatever it is, and if they don't want to do it, I will fire them. That is also very effective. But what you get out of that is not real change. What you get out of that is compliance. Yes, sir. I will do it. And as long as the threat of killing or firing or, in the case of our children, punishment, as long as that threat is in place, yes, we will continue to do that. But when that threat disappears, we were not ever convinced. Our hearts were not in it. There was no, the word we want is commitment, no belief. Then it disappears. So if you're going to introduce any kind of organizational change by fiat, by saying we will by next June, well, yes, you get the appearance, but no real change. The most startling example of that is a famous king in Egypt where you're not only king, but you are God, who tried to change the way religion and art were done. And as long as he was alive, yes, you can see the shift in Egyptian art. It became more lifelike instead of just like that. But interestingly enough, he died young. And upon his death, an immediate return to the way it was. So if God incarnate cannot change people, what hope do you have? So you'd be better off, if you want real change, go for belief. We're going to do it because we believe it. We're going to do it because we think this is the right thing to do. We're going to do it because we tried a little piece of it, baby steps, and yes, it seems to work for us. So to be truly convincing, you can't just do it by fiat. And the way you do that is by trying to touch the hearts of everyone in the organization. The pattern is called personal touch. Everyone is asking the same question. The answers are different, of course, but it's, why should I do this? What's in it for me? You can talk about Agile can deliver to the customer, but what's in it for me? What do I care about? And you can't do that for everybody. That's why you need help. Here's another quote from Jeff Patton. You have to address a genuine user need. Data does not equal empathy. You have to understand. You have to stand in the shoes of the person you're trying to convince. You don't really know by just looking on the outside. There's a lot in that pattern, and it's difficult trying to understand the viewpoint. So if you do have your nice presentation with your nice logical argument, remember, if you're talking to executives, it's not going to be the same as talking to testers, as talking to the business side, as talking to developers, as talking to customers, as talking to... They all see the world differently, and they're all asking the same question, but the answers are very different. A lot of work by E.M. Rogers, who looked at adoption of ideas across countries. And he identified these little categories, which I know you've heard about. So we slapped these names as patterns to make you remember that even with all the chocolate chip cookies in the world, people are going to have a different reaction to any new idea. And most of the time, especially if you are in marketing or sales, or if you're a developer looking to make marketing or sales, you tend to focus on those first two groups. The innovators are the people who are, well, I'll bet that's a lot of you. New ideas come along and you say, yes, yes, because it's the new, the latest, the greatest. Come on, how many of you have camped out in line to buy the next release of something? You don't do that here? You just don't want to raise your hand in front of other people? It's okay. Those people are called innovators. But in a normal population, and I have never seen a normal population, especially in our industry, it's very small, 2.5%. So if you're relying on those people who just like new cool things, in my community, when my husband retired 4 years ago, we moved to a retirement community. There are people there who still don't use an ATM. They want a real person to hand over cash. They don't trust machines. And actually, maybe they are right. Next category, open, yes. Willing to listen to you, yes. Like that PowerPoint, that logical argument, definitely, yes. They're the early adopters, and their response is, well, it sounds like an interesting idea, but I'd like to learn a little more about it. Can you tell me where I could find some more information? Don't overwhelm them, but have some things in your back pocket to say, oh, here's an interesting article, or here's a website where you could go read more about it. But again, look, normal population, 13.5%. Put them together. Those two early open categories, it's still not very many people. And most of you are only marketing to those two groups. There's a wonderful book by Clay Christensen that was written several years ago called Crossing the Chasm. Yeah, because if you want to reach the next big collection of people, that's the early majority, you've got to do something different. You can't just come out and say, wow, you need to get this latest version of whatever because it's new and cool or it will provide you with these benefits. The early majority doesn't care. So what is the question? I want to know what other people think. So if they don't see their brother-in-law or their next door neighbor or the guy who sits in the cubicle across the way, if they don't see a lot of other people using whatever it is that you're trying to sell, they're not going to buy it. It doesn't matter how cool it is or what the benefits are. That's not convincing for them. So you might as well save your cookie budget and instead concentrate on taking some little steps, making some little experiments so that lots of people will start using it, and then the early majority will see, oh yeah, looks like a lot of people are doing that now, so maybe I'll think about doing that. But not until then will they be convinced. The next category, if I have to, I guess. So they're the ones who are going to require some kind of, this is going away. I have a little netbook that I use for travel because I have unfortunately lost laptops or had them fall and broken, and so that's, and the only thing on it is what I need for this trip. And the last netbook I bought because it was running XP. So I had to get another one. I guess I have to. I have to spend another $200 on another netbook, if I have to. So only some constraint, including being fired, that could be one of the, if I have to, will they move in the direction you want them to go? And then, still, look how many resistant categories there are compared to how many open categories. And that's because we're human. Think of the penalty to us as a species if instead we were all innovators. We'd never get anything done. You would, oh God, this is the coolest news. Oh yeah, this one. In fact, you probably know people like that who never get anything done. They're just looking at the new and great. The laggards, we've always done it this way. I get this question when I have this slide from managers. I won't ask you to raise your hands. Managers say, Linda, how can I identify these people? And my answer is, these are not people. These are roles. And we take on different roles at different times. So, my innovator might be a technical innovator and like the newest, coolest gadget, but in the United States, I can tell you what the innovator has for lunch every day. It's a triple bacon cheeseburger with French fries. Make that a double order, please. And the innovator believes that ketchup is a vegetable. Would that innovator try sushi? No, I don't think so. So when it comes to food, the innovator is a laggard. And you might notice that in yourself. For some things, oh yes. And for other things, oh no. And so these are not, well, there's no hologram stamped in the forehead of innovators or early adopters. It's that we all move around within these categories. And of course, there is a relationship between the category and age. Most younger people tend to be at the top, but then windows begin closing. Most older people tend to be at the bottom. And this is true for organizations. Younger startups have more innovators, more early adopters. The longer that company is alive, the lower it will start to move until organizations that have been around for decades are now largely populated by late majority and laggards. Hence, the difficulty for them to see the way the world is going and why they should change. There's also a tendency, we already talked about this fallacy, to believe this is good, this is bad. Goodness, evil. That's not true either. I once saw an Agile proponent ask the question, I've got a guy on my team who will not pair program. Should we fire him? And the Agile proponent, the speaker, said yes. Now, if I had been the speaker, I would have said, well, why did you hire that person in the first place? Because he or she adds value of some sort. Is that still the case? Well, then find something else for that person to do. If they have to be on a team, let pair programs move them around. Because what I have seen in our industry is there's always some new change coming along. And once you've seen that over and over and over, you do tend to say, well, what was wrong with the way we were doing it before? It was working, wasn't it? I understood how to do that. Don't take that away from me. Will you salt that away? Did you hear what I said? Why do we have to do this new thing? The other one was working just fine. Don't take that away from me. And when you are decades older than you are now, you might pull that out of your pocket and say, yeah, Linda was right. That's what I'm saying right now. What you hope, as an introducer of ideas, these aren't fixed. You can move people up by letting them see what's going on, letting them have a chance to experiment. But just remember, this is where they sit. This is part of their point of view. Oh, we all know these people, don't we? Those negative people. They always resist new ideas. Well, we should definitely fire them. They're bad people. Stupid people. Have you ever gone to a meeting to present your nice little PowerPoint with all the benefits for your new idea and found that those who were in the meeting didn't listen to you? And they said, no, we're not going to do that. And you walked out and you say, well, what's wrong with them? So we tend to do that. People are resisting our idea. Must be something wrong with them. And most of the time we tend to say, they have nothing to say to me because they're just going to tell me what's wrong with my idea. I don't want to listen to them. This is the hardest pattern in the book. It's the name of the first one. Fearless. I used to sit next to a guy who really didn't like the kind of stuff I was doing, and when I saw him coming down the row of cubicles, I would go the other way and hide in the restroom, waiting for him to go by. So I just really didn't want to hear it. I knew he was going to say bad things about what I was doing. I knew he didn't like it. He was going to tell me why it wouldn't work. He was going to say, oh, well, we already did this before. So this pattern says, no, no, sir, no, ma'am. You stand your ground and you have a conversation with that person. And you take it upon yourself. This works in India. I don't know whether this will work here or not. You pretend that you've spent a lot of time and effort to go visit that person. This is a guru who is going to tell you something that you could not learn any other way. And it's your job not to argue back, oh, well, this is what we think a conversation is. A conversation is, well, I wait while you talk. And then I start in, and I talk, and I try to counter every one of your objections. And I hope that the end will be, ha! I win. That's a conversation. And that's the way we do it at work, and that's the way we do it at home, and in the pub. Oh, yeah. Just look around, you'll see this going on. And that's not what this is about. This is about listening. This is about respect. So instead of fighting to win, it's about listening that person into agreeing with you. So here's an example. I finally realized that, okay, Mary Lynn and I are working on this pattern. I can do it. Oh God, I can do it. I saw him coming down the row, and I thought, stand your ground, stand your ground. And he came up to me and he said, Linda, I've been wanting to talk to you about, and I just, oh, really? And finally he said, I guess I could try it. You'll try it? Sure, why not? I didn't say a word. I didn't argue a single point. I didn't get out my magic sword. I just listened. I just listened. I know now there are a lot of other things I could have done. I could have started writing some notes. Oh, that's interesting. Let me write that down. I could have asked some questions. Oh, tell me more about that. I could have done that. But I didn't know that at the time. 20 years ago, I was really pretty stupid at 53. Oh, that's all I did was just, I listened him. I listened him into agreeing with me. Doesn't always work. But this pattern is a backup to say, well, I see I can't convince you, but you know what? We need somebody on our team who doesn't believe that Agile, or whatever it is the greatest thing. We need somebody to point out the downsides, the side effects, all those things that because we have our I believe hat on, we're just missing completely. We need somebody to point those out. And there are lots of ways of implementing this. Edward de Bono has a wonderful book called Six Thinking Hats, and he says you could take turns playing this role if you don't have somebody who could adopt it, but that's an important role. It's a valued role. It should be a respected role. It'd be a good place for somebody who wouldn't pair program to say, hey, you could be our champion skeptic. And we want to hear from you. We want to know what you're thinking. You're going to help us be better. This pattern has an interesting side effect, which is when it becomes official and somebody has to play the role, after a while, they'll come up to you and say, you know, I'm tired of being the negative guy. I don't want to be the skeptic anymore. Let somebody else be the skeptic. It's not as much fun when you have to do it. When it's part of your job. You must be skeptical. Oh, yeah. Hadn't thought of that. Seen that happen several times. I want to be on the team. Normally comes up in a retrospective. I'm tired of playing the role. Say, fine, we'll pass the black hat around. It's valuable. We need somebody to do it. But it doesn't have to be you just because you're the skeptical guy right now. I once met a guy at a conference who had just read the book when it came out 10 years ago, and he said, Linda, I read your book. Oh, thank you, thank you. He said, yeah, I saw those patterns. Wow. He said, they don't work. Thank you for that. I always like to get feedback. Can you tell me what happened? So he started his story, and as he was talking, I saw a man riding into an organization on a white horse. And he was saying, listen up, all you people. I know the one true way. You, on the other hand, the ignorant, the unwashed masses, you need me. I will show you the way. I don't know why he wasn't successful. He really thought it was all about him. I have the idea. I am going to implement this. I'm going to make it happen. I am going to save. This is taking the evangelist over that line into fanaticism. I'm going to save all of you from your miserable past, and you will be so grateful. You will fall at my feet. and then crucify me. So the pattern is called ask for help. The most influential thing you can do right after the cookies is to go up to somebody and say, I'm trying to get a couple of teams in our organization to try this agile stuff, but I'm not an expert, and I think you probably know the people on that other team better than I do. Would you help me? And as soon as they say yes, then commitment and consistency, if you remember, that's a very powerful influence strategy, kicks in, and as soon as they start to help you, they are now influencing themselves. The most influential thing you can get people to do is take responsibility for some piece of the change initiative. It's not about me. I just think it's a great idea to try this agile stuff, and I need your help because you can, and say what it is. You know that team better, or you have contacts across the organization. You've been here longer. You're a guy. I did that a lot. Because unfortunately, sometimes nobody listens to women, especially older women from the United States. Well, that's strike 3. Okay. And when you've done that, we almost didn't write this as a pattern. Remember to say thank you. So we sent that out to our reviewers and we said, what do you think? Is that a pattern? And we got back so many stories, and all the stories were, last weekend I was here working on that database problem. I missed my son's baseball game. I didn't mind. This is my job. I like my work. But on Monday, everybody came in, the database was working. Not one person. Nobody on my team, not my team lead, my scrum master. Nobody said thank you. Nobody said, hey, I know you've been here all weekend. Thank you for that. So we wrote the pattern, and we started doing a little research. If it's really going to work, it has to be from the heart. You have to really mean it. And it has to be right away. When everybody comes back on Monday, you have to say right away, hey, I know you were here all weekend. It has to be detailed. It can't be just, hey, guys, thanks for all your hard work. I know you were here all weekend. Hey, you missed your son's baseball game, didn't you? Oh, I'm sorry about that. But you know what? You got that database problem fixed, and now we can do our demo. The customer is going to love this. We've been struggling with that all week, and now you got it fixed. So what's the impact? So it can't just be, hey, thanks a lot. It's got to be sincere, right away, say what happened, and what was the impact, if it's really going to be influential. That's something you can do all the time. You could even do that at home. I remember when we started doing that research, and I always had to remind my husband to do certain little chores around the home. And when he did one of them, I said, hey, I noticed you did that little chore. I didn't have to say anything. Hey, thank you for that. That means I don't have to worry about it. And he goes, are you writing a pattern? Poor guy. The research around this pattern is amazing. We thought it was about the people who get the thanks. No. It's about the people who give the thanks. That people who appreciate others, grateful people. Look at all these advantages. And is there in there saying, live longer, live longer? I know you could have gone to any other conference today, but you chose to spend your time here. And you've been so patient, sitting, listening to me talk. You know, as an old lady, I appreciate that. So I just want to thank you. Thank you for your time and attention. Thanks for listening.